Sure, I'd love to say hello to everybody. Hey, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. Um, Hopefully, we'll move towards um, doing less of these and more in-person stuff in the future. Um, look forward to those. Look forward to those times and those moments. Um, I do want to begin just by kind of echoing some of our thoughts last week from our account, and I just want to echo our prayers and thoughts continue to be with the family of Terrence Clark. I think that the tragedy rocked all of college basketball, so our thoughts are with their players, his teammates, and coaches and family, and everybody who knew and loved him. Um, I also want to just say a quick thank you to so many of so many Buckeyes who reached out with a letter, an email after the season, um, in particular in support of EJ and some of our players, as well as just kind of reflecting on the season. I think it says a lot when people have a moment. Your fans have a chance to engage and take the time to do that, whether it's an email or a letter. And I have a stack of them, and I don't want this media session to go by without them hearing me say thank you for that. And I know EJ and his teammates appreciate that as well. Obviously it's been a few weeks since the season ended, as we've had a chance to kind of reflect on the season in general. A lot of a lot of really good moments, and then obviously some ones that were really gutting, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I think that's the challenge for a coach, is you have a chance to reflect back with your group. We had a chance to spend some time together on Sunday, and this really was an enjoyable team to coach. A lot of fun, and it wasn't just, we had, I think, 7 wins over top 25 teams and 3 wins over top 10 teams. Finished 7 in the final AP poll. Had a couple all Big Ten selections, 7 straight weeks in the top 10, and another 20-win season. And I think as gutting as that final game was, the challenge for me has been making sure our guys understand they did put themselves in position with really quality play throughout the season. And yet at the same time, we recognize there's some things we have to continue to grow and improve on. And as I'm prone to do, the majority of my thoughts will be on that final game and that final moment. But I don't want it to diminish some of the really quality things that have been done, that were done last year, and some that weren't, that haven't been done in the last 6 or 7 years here. So as we move forward, there's obviously some things that we want to look at and grow and improve in this off season here. As much of the off season is no longer an off season for college coaches, in particular college basketball coaches, particularly the 6 to 8 weeks right after the season, because you have on average right now just about five transfers per team in Division One. That's where the numbers, I think, sit about today, about 5 per Division One team, or at least it's approaching that. And I wish I could tell you that. I just think we all know, new normal's been used a lot in the last year and a half, but it's the new normal in college basketball, and that's fine. It's part of it. But it certainly has been, for us, it's been honestly a pretty uneventful last few weeks. Yet at the same time, we have added a couple players and are waiting on kind of the decisions of as many of you know, of EJ and Dwayne as they continue to go through this process. So Really am excited about where we're at and the health and the general direction of our program, and excited about the off season here.
Okay, we'll get things started with Steve Hellwagon.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, news came out last week about Terry Johnson leaving for Purdue. I know you had said a lot of great things about him late in the season or mid-season. Being portrayed, I guess, he's getting an opportunity to maybe broaden himself professionally, all offense. And Coach Painter, obviously losing a couple guys, was in a situation where he needed some help immediately. So I don't know, just how did that all come down, and where are you headed with, I guess, your next hire there?
Yeah, Steve. So I don't just like Terry. I love Terry Johnson. Love him. Kristen, the boys, we've been together 7 years. 7 years is, it's a long time to be together. And I think I just love him as a person. He did good work for us, both at Butler and here in our 7 years together. And as he mentioned, the idea of doing offense after doing basically being our defensive coordinator for 7 years, I think what was appealing in a lot of ways. But just love Terry and his family. They're incredible people, and as I've mentioned, I really do think he's going to be a good head coach here sooner rather than later. Excited about the hire, and I'm taking my time with it. I think this gives us an opportunity to maybe adjust some things and some roles within our staff, and that's something I had thought about here in a couple weeks, really since the season ended. So really looking forward to it. I love our staff. I think we have really an outstanding group. Obviously, the two assistants as well as the support staff. It's a phenomenal group. So look forward. The position, as you might expect, has been an incredibly high demand. Incredibly high demand. So I'm trying to take my time and make sure that while I did have some ideas in mind here, and really in the last couple years, you always do. I still am trying to take my time with it. So I don't anticipate a decision anytime, really soon, Steve. But I'm excited about that it's a position that people are excited about, and I'm excited about the addition that we can add and some of the candidates that I've had conversations with.
Just clarifying, adding Joey Brunk, does that take you out of being able to add anybody else, a 21 high school senior? Are you done as of right now because of his addition?
Yeah, right now we're at the scholarship limit, Steve. And I know it's a little confusing with, the additional scholar. It's confusing for me as well. I've had to go to our staff and say, okay, where are we again? But right now we are up against the limit. If there's some type of roster movement, in the next month or two, obviously that could change things. But as of now, we're up against it with the scholarship limit.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Adam Jardy.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you. You mentioned that as a coach, your focus, it's hard for you to move on from a tough loss like that. You're going to think about that one for a while. As a team, how do you as a group, I guess, move forward now that some time has passed? And how do you sort of strike that balance between like reminding guys that, we have to be better than this, but also not just harping on the one big negative?
Yeah, Adam. It's a good question that I think I'm going to have to find that balance. I'm just going to have to find that balance. There have been tremendous coaches that I'm going to lean on that have went through something very similar to me, and a couple that I've already talked to, and a couple that have reached out to me, and to their credit, I really appreciate that. So, I'll ask them. I do think, as I mentioned right afterwards, and I said, we have to lean into it and own it. We can't ignore it. I think we have to lean into the fact that that while we had a really good Big Ten tournament and a good regular season, this was our first year that we just did not perform well in the NCAA tournament, and I think we have to own that. The other two opportunities that we had, obviously, I would have loved to had an opportunity with that third team, because on paper that was probably our most balanced and maybe our best team. But our other teams, two teams, really, did perform well in the NCAA tournament. This one didn't. So I think we own it and lean into it. And as a coach, that's what I'm going to do. And at the same time, you're not a 2 seed by accident. So there are moments that allowed you to be a 2 seed that you have to also reflect on. It's not easy to be a 2 seed. So, but with that comes great anticipation and expectation. And I think the challenging thing for me has always been, teams that you really like and you really like to coach and that, genuinely care and love for each other. Well, the highs are really high and the lows are really low. The teams that really genuinely care about each other, that is, their emotions are really strong. And I think this one still feels it and will continue to, because the care they had for each other was real and genuine. And the idea of them caring about the team and the team's success was real and genuine.
And these days, I mean, you said, within the next 2 months or so, who knows what, you might have to make a roster addition or two, and we'll see how that all plays out. But what are conversations like at this time period with Dwayne and EJ? Like, how much do you strike that balance there too of, wanting them to find their dreams, reach their goals, but also maybe recruiting them to try to stay? Like, how do you strike that balance right now, being like mentor and coach and advisor, I guess?
I'm trying to, Adam, give them the absolute truth from what I hear from NBA personnel. That's really what I'm trying to do, and separate any kind of personal feeling one way or the other. I really am. I'm really trying as much as possible to look through what is best for both of those young men right now. And I think what is best, it used to be what was best for kids was automatically if you were a first rounder. I think there's still something to be said for being a first rounder, but because of the guaranteed contract, but it has changed too, to some degree. So honestly, I'm just trying to look at, we've had a lot of conversations with both families, regular conversations, and we'll continue to. They're both great kids, both great families. So, I'm confident that while the decision is not imminent, I don't think for either guy. I think they'll make a decision that they feel like is best for them, and I'm going to support them along the way.
Okay, next up, Patrick Murphy.
Chris, sort of on that level, if you do get EJ back, it seems like you've got a pretty crowded, 4 and 5 there now, with Joey and Kyle coming back. How do you see Joey kind of fitting into the group that you already have? And how do you kind of work, minutes with a guy like Kyle, who I assume comes back for a 5th year expecting to play?
Yeah, good question, Patrick. I think that I would, time will tell on that, that you're right. If you're assuming everybody comes back to full health and everybody, EJ obviously goes through this process and feels like it's best for him to return. I get your question. I think I'm looking at that right now, but I still think there's some unknowns and some things to be figured out. Super excited about Kyle returning. Really excited about him returning, and obviously we all know how important he is to us and how much we felt his absence in those last 2 games, the Big Ten championship game and the NCAA tournament. So I think some of that will figure itself out. I think Zed, I'm really excited about the step that Zed can take for us moving forward. I think his off season, along with a couple of our young guards, is critical to our team next year as anything. And then the rest of it, we'll kind of figure it out there once we know what our roster looks like here in a couple months.
And then kind of a off the wall question, but I asked Ryan this last week. We've heard a lot the last several years as social media has kind of blown up about players being able to use that and kind of craft their own narrative. But coaches do that to some degree too. Ryan has done it a handful of times. And I know you're not as active on social media, but you have pick and choose moments to put stuff out there. And I'm curious how you look at that, how you view when to, make a statement on social media or put out a video or anything like that. And just kind of your approach to handling your own social media accounts as a coach.
Well, full disclosure, I don't always handle all of my social media stuff, but I try to as much as possible. And I think that, I'm below average at the social media deal. Admittedly, I think it's more probably time consuming than I care to give it credit. But I do think there is some importance to it. And I do think that, to your point, whether it's a response to what happened with EJ, or maybe a response to some of the social issues that happened last year, I think to have an avenue where you can express that from a personal perspective is important. And it's the reason why I've maintained an account for the most part. Listen, we all know that Twitter at times can be, a bit of a cesspool in so many ways for the negative and those that are quick to complain and gripe. And I try to dip in and out of there, to be honest with you. But I think there are times where it's important to make a statement from a personal account.
Okay, Tony Gerdeman.
Chris, you mentioned Zeddy taking this next step. We see him before every game working on his jumper and his perimeter game, and he looks comfortable out there. Is that part of that next step? And what do you expect from him next year?
I'm sorry, Tony,
Zed.
Yeah.
Zed.
So I think it's part of his evolution as a player. I think it's part of his evolution as a player. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like next year. Caleb took a significant jump from year 1 to year 2 in that area. I'm not saying that I do think that's eventually going to be a part of his game, but the bigger thing for him is playing longer, harder, conditioning, fitness, some of his balance. I just think I'm really excited about his growth as a player. And, we sat here sometime last year, and I think we thought EJ and Dwayne had the potential to be really good players, but no one, I don't think, predicted them to be all conference players. I don't think. So I do think that there is growth there for him, as along with some of our other young guys. But it's the summer's important. As far as stretching his game, I think that'll eventually be a part of his game. He's got to start making free throws at a higher clip, and he will. But I do think that's stepping out beyond the 3-point line is going to be a part of his game eventually, for sure.
Thanks.
For sure.
Okay, Tim Hall.
Hey, Chris, what was going through your mind when you found out that Zed and Michi were getting this opportunity to try out for the U19 team? That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Great honor for those guys. So I got contacted pretty early about them. I got asked to be an assistant coach on the team about a couple months ago, and it just schedule-wise didn't work out. So about the same time, I think you guys know I worked with USA Basketball a couple years ago, and it's an incredible organization. And I would have I think really enjoyed being an assistant coach on that team. It just didn't work out this particular time. But about the same time, Tim, is when they told us that that Zed and Michi were going to get asked, and we really don't have any role in that. We don't nominate guys. That comes directly from USA Basketball and from some of their kind of grassroots organizations where they view guys. I've been a part of that process with the under U19 team before. It's a pretty grueling few days, but super excited for those guys. And they jumped at it. They were like all in, like, Coach, we're going to it. Can we room together? And I was like, you guys room together here. You want room together? You sure? Yeah, can we room together there? That's what first thing Michi asked me. So they're really excited about it. And I'm excited about going out there and taking a couple days to watch them during their tryouts.
That's funny you mentioned that you were asked to be an assistant, because I saw that Jamie Dixon was the coach and didn't know if you had a relationship with him. And I couldn't find any assistants anywhere outside of calling up the offices. Do you know who the assistants are going to be on that squad?
I don't know. I'd heard a couple names, but I don't know definitively if they have any right now. They typically have like 2 assistant coaches and then some like maybe 2 other guys. And there's a process to it. They kind of bring you in, Tim, and they ask you to kind of begin in this role and then be an assistant and then be a head coach. But I can't remember who the 2 guys are right now.
Hey, thanks, man.
Sure.
Hey, Stephen Means.
Chris, I obviously last year didn't end the way you wanted to, but there were some raised expectations, especially as that season went on. I don't know how much you look at way too early predictions and all that stuff, but assuming Dwayne and especially EJ, assuming they come back, these expectations aren't going to go away. It's going to probably be the same thing next year where people are going to think you're a Final Four team and whatnot. So just kind of projecting out a little bit in your eyes, what this team can look like next year when a lot of these guys are a year older now. They've actually been through an NCAA tournament for the most part.
Yeah. No, Stephen, I think that's valid. I do think that the experience of playing in a tournament and also being a high seed in the tournament, there is value in that. There is value in particularly that experience of feeling the pressure of being a high seed in the tournament. It's so early right now, Stephen. There's so much transition with roster, like, those way too early lists are going to look so different in, a couple months. But as I mentioned, I feel really, really good about the health of our program. I feel really good about where we're at. And, I know we were picked, I think, middle of the pack last year, but I think the raised expectation was a credit to our players. And I think we've it's exciting, but there's just so much that has to happen between now and then with, as you mentioned, with both guys that are really important. You have 2 guys that, have tough decisions in front of them. And I think once we know that, Stephen, will have a better feel for kind of where we're at, and we'll lean into staying in the moment and having a growth mindset and trying to prepare ourselves for what's coming. But that's a good place to be in with the expectations. I think that's a good place to be in.
And just to follow up on the coaching search, you just said maybe this gives you an opportunity to adjust some roles. So would you like someone who could do what Terry did for you as the defensive coordinator, or are you looking more for an offensive mind and maybe somebody on the roster can just assume those duties that Terry's had for the last few years here?
Jake will be our defensive coordinator, okay. And we do it a little bit different, fellas. I know very much we're talking football lingo here, which is actually appropriate here with this group. But I think we do it a little bit different with scouting, Stephen, and that we do, well, we say defensive coordinator, and Ryan Peden has been our offensive coordinator for really for the 6 years we've been together. I think that, or 5, he's been 5 of the 6 years. I think for us, um, it's not quite as, some of the defensive struggles that we had last year, that's on me. That's not on anybody else. That's on me. So I want to make sure that that's clear. But yeah, that will be Jake's responsibility here moving forward for sure.
Okay, next up, Jay Holbrook.
Hey, Coach. I just wondered, with the addition of Jamari and Jimmy coming back healthy, how do you strike that balance with Michi and a new guy in Malachi, and what those two guys, those older guys, will bring to someone like Michi and Malachi, being a little bit older and being used to college basketball and being in different teams before?
Yeah, no, I'm excited about, really excited about Jamari and excited about what he brings in terms of a guy that can defend the ball. We're losing that with CJ Walker, who was really good at defending the ball. It's an area that Dwayne has to improve in if he returns. I think Michi can be good at guarding the ball, which is important for us. He's got really good feet. I think, Jimmy brings different strengths in terms of his positioning defensively. But I think those are things that kind of you wait to figure out once you know exactly what your roster is going to look like, for sure. But you certainly need depth there. We're looking forward to some of our guys like Jimmy who are not healthy getting healthy. I'm super excited about the step that Michi can take as a player, as well. A young guy who I think bringing him in when we did, I liked that, and I felt like that was a good decision at the time and remains a good decision. And hopefully next year will provide some benefits from his experience there. But yeah, Jamari obviously meets a need for us in terms of both his defense, his on-ball presence, his offense has improved, as we know, and he can be a real pest on the ball, that's for sure.
And then just your reactions to the one-time transfer rule kind of coming. It feels like it's been a long time coming too.
Yeah, it has been. You could really say that's been in effect for a year with all the waivers that went through last year. I think everybody understood that's where it was heading. And those that, like, listen, I was looking at the news the other day, saw a college program, I believe a high major program, who had 13 players in the transfer portal. Another one had 9. And they're good programs. And I just think it's really, I think, listen, it can certainly, your ability to adjust as a coach and as a coaching staff, it's required now. Your job as a quote unquote a general manager is as important as any job description for you right now. And I think that's where it's at. And there's many. Listen, I'm not going to get into the arguments for or against it because they've been well documented, and I can appreciate both sides. I can certainly understand people's concerns about what it could do to our game, but I think we all are in the process of needing to adjust. For us, that's really been the case the last 3 to 4 or 5 years. I just think now maybe more of your fans are starting to realize that, hey, this is, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 potentially every year. It's just, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, that's the way it is.
Thank you.
Okay, Colin.
Hey, Chris, just looking at the additions of Jamari and Joey in particular, like they're not, I don't know that people would call them necessarily flashy additions, but they fit the roles that you were looking for. Why them specifically? Why did they fit what you want to do in those two, with those two additions?
Yeah, Colin, it's good to actually see your face here. I didn't see your face there for the first few minutes there. So listen, I understand, immediately, sometimes your fans look at points per game and say, well, we should be taking this guy or that guy, but you're trying to assemble a team. And, while we don't know anything on a couple of our players, we do understand we have some guys that have performed well that are returning. So you're trying to put a team together. And I just felt like with Jamari, he answered some questions in terms of our perimeter play, defense and leadership. And Joey is a guy who's, who played, he's never played more than 20 minutes, but he did play 20 minutes on an NCAA tournament team, whatever people want to say about like that team. That Indiana team was an NCAA tournament team. And I think a quality team. And he performed well there and was able to provide a big presence. I think in our minds, we could see, I don't know that I know, well, I do know we will not play as quote unquote small as we did last year. I think that provides more opportunities for Zed and for Joey as well.
Then I think you talked several times during the season about defensively and you needed to get better, but maybe there was a cap on how good you guys could get, and you probably didn't get to the level that you thought you needed to. But this offseason going into next season, do you think you'll find that balance that you want? Do you think that this roster is better set up to have the balance that you're seeking?
Well, I'm hopeful. Again, I think some of that depends on the way some of our young guys get better. We need guys like, again, Zed to take a step forward, some of our young perimeters and our perimeter play in general to take a step forward. We need some of our returning guys to improve in those areas. While, listen, playing a little bit bigger at times could affect our offense. There's potential for that. EJ's going to play almost exclusively at the 4. While that could affect us some if he returns, but that could affect us some. I think hopefully there'll be a little bit more balance to us defensively. So I think I think what we have to do is take a good hard look at what we could do to maybe put them in better position. Collectively, we have to have a little bit better. We have to have a better commitment to it collectively, and at the same time, if we can, we had the 4th best offense in the country last year. I would love to see us we've had a top 20 offense for the last couple of years. As I mentioned, our 3rd year, we had a top 20 offense and a top 20 defense, which is in a perfect world where you'd like to be in that top 20 range, because it typically leads to really good postseason success. I just think that we have to get a little more balance to our team.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's go back to Adam Jardy.
Chris, as you've talked about different guys having big off seasons ahead of them, one that jumps to my mind is Seth Towns. And I just wonder, it seems like he could be in line for maybe a big step. And you talked a lot during the season about him not being where he wanted to be, but that next year was maybe a bigger opportunity for him. What does an off season look like for Seth? And how does that change what you think you might be able to get from him and what should be his last season?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think his offseason's critical, Adam. He just got to get healthy. He's got to get fully healthy. I think if he gets fully healthy, I was really proud of Seth this year because, one of the 2 or 3 things we're looking and really examining hard here in the postseason is maybe why we were banged up towards the end of the year like we were with Justice and obviously Kyle's was kind of a freakish incident, but all of those collectively that impacted us, we're taking a good hard look at that. Is there some things we could have done better as a staff? But I was really proud of him. He helped us win games, and I'm excited about what's next for him. I think his offseason is as critical as anyone on our team for sure.
And you were asked about the transfer rule a moment ago, and I just maybe looking a little bit bigger picture, does that change how you have to recruit high schoolers? Do you think that will change how, like, recruiting and bringing in freshmen? I mean, it seems like you could very easily make an argument that it makes more sense to go out and get a proven guy rather than invest 3-4 years in a kid that could transfer after a year. Do you see that in the sport having maybe a change as far as where the approach starts to be focused in recruiting?
I do think you'll see that change. I do think you'll see this affect high school kids, unfortunately. I do. I just think it's going to provide a few less opportunities. And that is a byproduct of this that probably hasn't been talked about enough. For us, we're always going to have a blend, and we're always going to rely on recruiting high school kids and helping, develop them. We obviously have a great start here in this next class, but that's always going to be what we're going to do. But listen, I've had coaches tell me that they're going to recruit exclusively the portal. That's not how we're going to do it. And I've heard high major coaches say that's not how we're going to do it, but that's one way of doing it. And I don't look at it and say that's right or wrong. It's just a different way of doing it.
Okay, next, Pete. Lettermen's Row.
Hey, Chris. So much of the season had to do with COVID for so many teams, but towards the end of your season, we just didn't talk about it a lot. I mean, what was the impact the last 6 weeks of the season? I mean, and just talking to EJ 3 weeks ago, it made it seem like it was a huge deal for these players to be able to have the season come to an end and be able to be with their families.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it really was. They were ready. We're talking about multiple months, 2 semesters, a little bit longer season than some other sports. So between the testing, our guys were phenomenal. Like, they were phenomenal with the COVID protocols all year. They were as disciplined and committed to following the protocols as you could possibly expect. Their character in that regard was kind of the character you saw on the floor. They cared about the program, and they cared about the program's success, and they cared about each guy being healthy. It was phenomenal, and they deserve a ton of credit for it. Having said that, they were ready to not be tested every day, and they were very ready to see their families, as they should be. We got to go home to our families every night. They didn't get a chance to see their families and engage with them. They understood that. They accepted that. But it doesn't mean that they weren't really ready for that moment. So EJ speaking from the heart there, I think it's real. They were all ready for that. They certainly would have loved to play a couple more weeks. The transition, at some point we can talk, well, maybe we can't talk about it, but the transition from the Big Ten tournament to the NCAA tournament was unique. It was unique, and it brought kind of its own set of challenges there, particularly with playing on that Sunday. And but I think our guys were phenomenal with it. I think and the protocols were understandable, and we accepted all of them both here and at the NCAA tournament. It allowed us to play, which we're going to be forever grateful for.
Ryan made a comment about 1 or 2 weeks ago about just how remarkable it was that football played a season. How remarkable is it that you guys got a whole season in? And do you think that's something that will be more remarkable maybe in 10, 15 years?
I think the remarkable part of it, Pete, is, if we were 10 and 21, I don't know that I would use the word remarkable for us, just because I think the remarkable part of it, or the really pleasing part of it, is that our guys embraced everything that was in place, and had a good attitude, had a good approach, played with a joy each game. And those that watched us could never say they were passionless in how they played. They played with a real joy. And I think that's the remarkable part of it, just kind of getting through it and gritting your teeth and, not having a great attitude about it. I'm not sure if that's remarkable. I do feel really good about, and obviously football set an incredible tone there with Ryan and his group, but I feel equally pleased with how our guys perform throughout the season in terms of the COVID protocols.
Okay, we'll go back to Patrick.
Chris, on Joey and Jamari, both guys obviously played in the Big Ten, and you don't see a ton of that transferring within conference, but you do get, because of that, a chance. You saw them up close and personal. How much knowing them from scouting them, playing against them, helped you, evaluate what they could bring to your program?
Yeah. It's hard to get the last minute of that, of halftime versus Penn State here at home out of my head. With Jamari, that was a quick tone changer in terms of the game there. Fortunately, we won it, but he created havoc on that play. So I think familiarity was certainly part of it. And then I think once we dove into the kind of kids, I knew Joey obviously, but once we dove into kind of the kid Jamari is, and I think as our team is currently comprised, we felt like those were the right additions for this group, and familiarity helped with that for sure. We admired I admired the way that Penn State team played this year, given kind of what they had went through. I really did. And I think they're going to have another good team. I think they've got a really talented group. I think I always admired the way Jamari competed, always did. And as well as obviously, had recruited Joey dating back 5-6 years. So I think that familiarity, knowing Joey's motor, knowing Jamari's competitiveness was a factor.
Okay, Colin.
I want to ask about recruiting since we don't do that a ton. How do you sort of feel that, the 21 and 22 classes have gone for you guys? Do you feel like you've sort of gotten into a little bit of a groove in the types of guys that you're after?
Yeah, I do. I do, Colin. I do. I feel good about, I feel really good about our classes. I feel really good about it. I feel like we're in good position. Have a tremendous start in the 22 class and good position with some other guys. June's going to be an important month for us, both with visits and getting off campus. But I feel like we're in good position. Jake and Ryan have done a phenomenal job in building some relationships. And I feel excited about this. We only have a couple freshmen now that Michi's here coming in, but I've talked about the excitement about Malachi and Kalen, and I think Malachi's got a chance to really grow into a special player. Super excited about that. And listen, I think when you first get here, I think we all know we all understand when you first get here, a little bit of it, given where our roster was at the time, was we were just trying to grab guys and we wanted to have some bigger classes, and we knew there might be some shuffling there. But as we all understand, the roster was a bit gutted, particularly after that first team. So there was probably a little bit of trial and error there, given where kind of what our roster was when we got here. And there was, you could say there was some decisions that, looking back on, you reflect and say, okay, maybe we should have went there instead of there. I think some of that's normal when you take over a program that is, that might have had some challenges in terms of building that roster and trying to build it quickly. Again, particularly after losing Kate and JT that first year. So I think I feel really good about where we're at now, maybe as opposed to kind of what we felt in those first couple years of a little bit of scramble mode.
I know you've gone after some of those, the highly touted 5-star type of big men, especially recently in the last class or two. What do you think it'll take for you to land one of those types, without obviously naming certain names?
A 5-star or just a 5-star big man?
5-star big man.
Oh, I think it's I think we just have to keep swinging. I would love for it to be a regional, local prospect, but that run of big man that we saw here that came through felt like every year when I used to watch Coach Mata's teams over here, and I was like, man, there's another one that came from the state. I think that helps as well, but like I said, I feel good, feel well positioned. I think we're in good position with some guys here moving forward.
Thanks.
Okay, Tim?
Chris, I was wondering if you could give your take on the pre-draft process for maybe a minute. I mean, it's great, clearly, that the players can go through this. It's also got to be a headache at the same time. There's probably no perfect balance, but I'm just wondering what you think of that, their ability to come back, what that does to maybe you and how you have to replenish. If you say make believe both guys would stay in the draft, what is that like for you?
Well, if both guys stay, that would be a challenge. If it's best for them, then again, they'll have my full support. The challenge right now, Tim, really is the timing being a little bit delayed because of COVID and the draft moving back. It would have all naturally happened a little bit sooner. As we know, the dates have been pushed back, and some questions right now about our NBA team's going to do workouts. So the intel that you could normally get from workouts, is the combine going to take place, and to what extent is that going to take place? I think COVID brings some challenges when you're going through that process with a couple guys, and the delay of it and how it affects our team. That's real, but my first obligation is to those guys and trying to get them the best information, support them to make the best decision. Obviously, I'm also very aware of how it could affect our team in general, and thinking about that regularly. But right now, we're at a bit of a standstill in that regard, and kind of going through that process. But the challenges of COVID and the delay this year, not knowing for sure, is it's different, and it does present more challenges for sure.
Do you think in a normal year, players that do go undrafted, maybe didn't hire the agent, should be allowed to come back after the draft?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that rule, the deadline of allowing players to go through the process, in most cases, it can be a positive experience. In some cases, it's not. I coached a young man at Butler, and I've shared this story, and I approached him about, he's in the NBA now, and I approached his dad after he had been with us for a couple of years about going through the process, and his dad was against it at the time. He just wanted his first impression to be a really good one. So I think there are countering viewpoints on that, but I also think that typically it's a good idea. But in some cases, you'll have some families that will be against it because they don't feel like their sons are quite ready. But I think the idea of going through it and returning, if it's in their best interest, is a good thing.
Thanks.
Okay, just like old times, we'll finish up with Lori Schmidt.
Where is Lori?
Lori, you there? No? Maybe Lori finished on us.
Lori fell asleep. Lori's, if she comes back, Dan, I'll take her final question.
All right, we'll take one from Adam real quick.
Don't want to steal Lori's thunder, but didn't want to waste the opportunity. Chris, you've spoken about how good you feel about the direction of the program and the group of guys and everything that you've got building. You're 4 years into your time at Ohio State, and I just wonder for you personally, if you could reflect on where you think you are, what you make of your 4 years at Ohio State, how comfortable you feel, and maybe any thoughts you have going forward.
Ooh, that's a big final question there, Adam. That's a big final question.
Save the best for last, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, no, I think, listen, I think I can be, I'm really hard on myself for one. But I think that, is that Lori? Probably. But I think Adam, I can be certainly my own worst critic. And my wife and others close to me certainly tell me that. But I think if, objectively, if I were to look at it objectively, I would say, okay, we've our first 2 years, we were picked in the bottom half of the Big Ten. And while we had some struggles, we were able to get to the tournament and perform well, the NCAA tournament, and perform well and win a couple games. Year 3, I thought we were playing the best that maybe we have played and had a chance. Obviously, postseason, Big Ten tournament and NCAA got taken away from us. So who knows what that would have looked like. Perhaps we would have had an opportunity there to really perform well. As I talked about last year, so while I understand that there were some challenges for us early with when we took over, we understood that. We have yet to really have a really poor season, and I think in some ways that's a good thing. It also kind of ratchets up expectations right away. I think I'm always looking at ways in which we can improve and take the next step and perform and do better in certain areas. And while I think we have certainly established a level of success and competitiveness, both nationally, we've been ranked in the top 15, I believe, top 25 every year, but in the top 15, 3 of 4 years. So there's a national relevancy that I think has been reached. We have not reached by any stretch, the peak years of Thad's incredible run, or Coach O'Brien's a couple years there, or dating back to others. Obviously, the run in the 60s was the one that got to the final finish line. So that's our goal. That's what we're working towards every day. I acknowledge the fact that we've got work to do towards that, but I could not feel really any better about kind of overall the health of our program. And yet I recognize that we have opportunities and steps in front of us. So that's kind of overall where I would say the assessment of the 4 years would be.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one from Steve and then finish up with Lori.
Yeah, Coach, just curious about the schedule real quick. I know you took that event in Florida for 2 games, it sounds like, and probably have your ACC opponent and maybe a Big East opponent. Any other neat surprises coming down the pike with that? Anybody you feel like you've had home and homes with Cincinnati and some other teams? Anybody you feel coming down the pike with that?
Yeah, Steve. So I think, we spoiled probably our November, December ardent fans with that home schedule. What was it? Year maybe 3, 2 or 3, year 3, I think, with Cincinnati and Villanova there in back-to-back games. I don't know quite if the schedule, I think there'll be times where the schedule has that degree of pop early. I'm not sure if it will consistently have that. That was just a unique situation. We are always going to try to play in one of those preseason tournaments, Steve. And I think all in all, those have typically been something, the day where you could play, 9 or 10 quote unquote, bye games, those days are over. I don't want to do that. And I think by and large, probably fans don't want to do that, don't want to see that. Having said that, we all know some of those teams are really good. I think for us, it's about building a quality schedule. The 20-game schedule of the Big Ten has changed things a little bit. The addition of those preseason tournaments have changed things a little bit. So as far as playing another home and home against the likes of the teams that we've mentioned right now, we don't have those on schedule for this coming season.
Thanks.
Okay, Lori, here's your shot.
Can you hear me now, Coach?
Gotcha.
I got you, Lord.
Oh,
I
good.
got your audio.
So nice to hear from you today. I wanted to follow up on something. You mentioned what a challenge it was transitioning from the Big Ten tournament to the NCAA. I'm wondering what it was about that posed such an additional challenge this year.
You know, I think, Lori, as much as anything, I had a number of coaches tell me, hey, if you get to the Big Ten championship game, be prepared for what that's going to do to your team that next week. So I just think while the turnaround was not Sunday to Thursday, as it's been for some of our teams in the past, I think Thad might have had 1 year where that was the case. I think that in general is a normal part of the challenge, the emotional and physical toll that those games can take on you, and particularly if you're playing 4 games in 4 days and then the quick turnaround. By no means does that. I'm not saying that as a reason why we didn't perform well on Friday, but I'm just saying that challenge, and I think the idea of just, you know, you typically go back, have a chance to watch the selection show as a group. It was literally, we went right from the floor to the selection show, and I just think the specifics of that, Lori, I probably wouldn't want to get too involved with. I understand all the protocols that were in place, but just it was a different experience going from there right back to the hotel and then into a quarantine for a good bit. Again, Illinois went through it. They were in the championship game as well, and it was a unique experience for sure. But again, we got to play a season, so at the end of the day, we're all grateful for that.
Okay. Thanks, Coach. Everybody.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Be well.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. Thanks, guys.